Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of 3 Wide. I'm your host, Radney Crawford. Today, we're going to be going over the race weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, where we had a first-time winner in the Craftsman Truck Series race. We also had a Cup Series regular win the Xfinity Series race, and Chevy makes it 3 for 3 on the season with Kyle Larson getting the race win on Sunday. So let's start diving right into the action. So after back-to-back super speedway races to kick off the season, we finally got to see some mile-and-a-half racing where Kyle Larson came away with his first victory of the season at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He dominated, leading 181 of the 267 laps. He also got max points on the day as he won both stages along with the race victory. But in today's episode, I want to look more through the field where we may have gotten a preview on how the season can go for a couple of these teams that had a lot of questions over the offseason. Starting with Stewart-Haas Racing, overall, while their finishes may not show it, they seem to have more speed this season. And it all really starts with Noah Gragson. If you had told me that 3 races into the season, Noah would be statistically the strongest Stewart-Haas Racing driver, that he would have 2 top 10s out of 3 races, I would not believe you. His rookie season was abysmal, even before he was suspended. And Stewart-Haas Racing, as we all know, they have struggled over the past couple years. So it seemed like this was going to be another year of struggle for Gragson. But he has been solid and made the most of his second chance in the Cup Series. And who knows where he could have finished at Atlanta. He could very well be sitting on top of 3 top 10s or better if he hadn't been involved in that lap 2 crash. But he finished 9th at Daytona. But at Vegas, this was where he had his most impressive run to date, not only just the season, but in his career. He was fast all weekend. This wasn't just a fluke top 10. He was second quickest in practice, the only practice session they had. He did qualify 30th, but he finished in 6th place, and he worked his way through the field throughout the day. You could see it in his stage 1 finish, his stage 2 finish. He was just slowly working his way up, ultimately finishes in 6th, and that was what was so impressive to me, and it gives me hope for Stewart-Haas Racing. If this had been last season, I don't think Noah would have sniffed the top 20, much less near the top 5 after qualifying in 30th. And the same can be said for Stewart-Haas Racing if they had found themselves that deep in the field in their races last season. And as a matter of fact, I went and looked at it, and last season you only had really 2 instances where drivers came close to this for Stewart-Haas Racing. You had Eric Almirola start one race in 30th, finish in 9th. Chase Briscoe started 31st in one race and finished in 10th. And those are really the only 2 races where you saw such an improvement from their starting spots. Most of the time, where they started is where they hung around, or they even finished below where they were starting at if they were deep in the field. So the fact that Noah was able to go out and do it this early in the season on a mile-and-a-half track and come close to getting to a top 5 shows that Stewart-Haas Racing is taking a step in the right direction. As for Chase Briscoe, who is really the new lead driver over at Stewart-Haas, he finished 21st, but that finish doesn't really show how good he was. He qualified in 6th, and through the day, like Gragson, he was running up near the top 10, even up in the top 5 at one point in the race. So Briscoe is showing speed each and every week. He was up near the front at Atlanta and could have been in contention for the win if he hadn't been involved in that crash. So he very well could be sitting here with 2 or 3 top 10s himself to start the season. Luckily for Briscoe, we now head to Phoenix, which is his best track. It's where he has his only Cup Series win to date, and he has scored a couple top 10 finishes since that win at Phoenix. So look for Briscoe to be a dark horse contender for the Phoenix race, or at least possibly come out with a top 5 or top 10, which I think anything less than that would be a disappointment. Then you have Josh Berry, who finished 20th at Las Vegas, and it wasn't really anything of a flashy day. It was just an okay race for Josh. He's been running there in that 20th to 30th range so far early in this season, but I believe he's one of the safer drivers in the SHR stable as far as 2025 is concerned. He has the benefit of this being his first full-time season. He does have a great crew chief behind him with Rodney Childers, who is a big reason, along with Kevin Harvick, why SHR stayed so competitive over the past couple years. If you give these 2 time so that they can get better chemistry and for Barry to figure out what he's doing out there in this next gen car, I think the finishes will improve, and we should really see that once we start hitting these tracks for a second time in the season. Ryan Preece, though, I believe is the driver with the hottest seat right now at Stewart-Haas. Preece has shown flashes last year. He had that strong run at Martinsville, but he's got to get where he's doing it on a more consistent basis. He cannot keep having these mediocre finishes and expect to keep his ride. Now, I'm not questioning his talent. We all know how good Preece is as a driver. We've seen him get it done in the Truck Series, in the Xfinity Series, but he's got to do more if he wants to make this Cup career stick. Now, let's say one of these drivers doesn't make the cut for 2025 for Stewart-Haas Racing. Tony Stewart made it clear early in the preseason that these guys have to go out and perform. So if one of these drivers doesn't come back next season, what does SHR do? To me, there's only two real options. Number one, they could simply shut down one of the teams to put more focus on the three competitive cars they have, put more resources behind them to get themselves back to where they were. Or you can go down to the Xfinity Series and grab Riley Herbst, who over the past season has improved significantly as a driver. He finally got his first win late last season at Las Vegas. And going back to the Charlotte Roval last October, Herbst has only finished outside the top 10 once and out of the top 5 twice. So out of the 8 races in that time period, this guy has 1 win and 6 top 5s. He is putting up numbers that is going to get the attention of a Cup Series team. He has had some part-time starts in the Cup Series at super speedways for Reemergence Racing as well as Front Row Motorsports, and he's been pretty good. He's gotten 2 top 10s out of 5 starts. He's led laps. And a big plus behind him is his sponsorship. I believe he would bring with him the Monster sponsorship, so that would bring teams some solid ground there as far as sponsorship goes. I don't know if there is a right or wrong decision in either one of these options, but if they do want to stay a 4-car team, you have to go down and get Riley Herbst. I don't know of anyone else that you can go down there and justify getting over him right now, as long as he has been with SHR in the Xfinity Series. Before we continue going over the race weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. Hunt to Harvest is back to support another season of 3 Wide, and to tell you a little about them, they are a brand created to protect the hunt and to get back to the basics and the real reason for the hunt. A brand that supports the harvesting of the animal instead of just focusing on the trophy. To Hunt to Harvest, hunting is all about spending time with loved ones, providing for your family through the harvest, and giving thanks to the one who created all things. And you too can support this great mission and company by going to hunttoharvest.com and updating or upgrading your hunting apparel, where they have several new shirt designs in both short sleeve and long sleeves, and these shirts are also made out of 100% Peruvian cotton and true to size after one wash. They also have new rope hats in, but they are moving fast, so you better get your order in quick. So head on over to hunttoharvest.com, and when you check out, be sure to use the promo code RADNEY18923. That's RADNEY18923 for even more savings. Then you have Spire Motorsports. They were a big talking point over the offseason, conversations about how competitive would they be. Over the past couple of years, you have seen an improvement with this team, and they keep talking about wanting to take that next step and to be more competitive. And it was a question of, could they get to the next level, which is running up in the top 10, near the top 5, because last year, Corey LaJoie was better with this team. He did show more consistency. He was running in the top 15, fringe top 10 finishes. He was more consistent. And this team also went out and brought in a whole bunch of new players, from drivers, crew chiefs, spotters, crew members. The caliber of people they were bringing in were pointing to how serious they were about getting more competitive. And so far, it looks like they have taken that next step. Now, Zane Smith, you really can't judge him off the finishes he's had this year. He's had some pretty rough luck. 3 races into the season, his best finish was at Daytona, where he was 13th. Last week at Atlanta, he made contact with the wall and ended up out of the race thanks to the DVP clock. Then we get to Las Vegas, where he has more issues and has another disappointing finish. The good thing for Zane's rough start is there's nowhere else to go but up. He is still a top prospect in my eyes when it comes to the Cup Series. Right now, he's just kind of in limbo, waiting to see what happens over at Trackhouse, but he still has a bright future ahead of him in the Cup Series. His teammate, Carson Hocevar, he has been showing exactly why he was moved straight up from the Truck Series to the Cup Series. He doesn't have any top 10s yet this season, but he does have back-to-back top 20 finishes with a 19th at Atlanta and 15th at Vegas yesterday. Daytona, he was kind of robbed of a good finish there. He was taken out of the race 5 laps into it, so we really didn't get to see what he had. But like Josh Berry, he's got a good crew chief behind him in Luke Lambert, who has been known to build up and mold these young drivers. And I would put Hocevar on the short list of drivers who I see going out and getting their first win this season. but I believe his teammate Corey LaJoie is closer to getting his first win than Hocevar. Corey finished 4th at Daytona. He finished 13th at Atlanta. But yesterday at Vegas, he had a great run going. LaJoie had worked his way into the top 5. He was running at one point in second place, battling drivers of very well-established teams and holding his own. While he didn't get the finish he should have gotten, he finished in 32nd after getting in a wreck. This team should at least take some pride, and it should be a confidence booster that they were able to go out and compete throughout Stage 1 and Stage 2 against teams like Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, and Team Penske. Now, let's talk a little bit about the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. They were in Vegas Friday night, where Rajah Caruth gets his first career win after qualifying on the pole, and it has been a career-making start to the season for Rajah. He has scored a top 10 in all 3 races, and he has been consistently running up at the front, week in and week out. This could set up quite a bit of a hot streak for Rajah going forward. Getting that first win is always difficult. Now that pressure's off of him and he's locked into the playoffs, he can focus on going out and just racking up victories and points and building up his stock. Now, another driver who has been equally as impressive as Rajah has been Tyler Ankrum. He has now moved over to MHR, and 3 races into his season, he is the current points leader. He has also already led more laps than he ever has in his previous 5 seasons of his career. And what has kept him in this points lead so far is all about the stage finishes. He has finished in the top 10 in all but 1 stage run so far this season. And that has helped him rack up to get to this point, and he would be the driver I look at next to be the one to get to victory lane. He hasn't won since 2019 when he was just 18 years old, so you know he is ready and hungry to be the next one to get into victory lane. I did not see him having this level of reemergence into the sport, but it's not surprising with this team. MHR did this exact thing last year with Christian Eckes, who was really needing a shot in the arm himself to get his career back on track. Now it seems that has moved over to Tyler Ankrum and the 18 team. I know it's only 3 races into the season, but Tyler Ankrum, Rajah Caruth, they seem to be separating themselves from the rest of the field when it comes to championship contenders. As for the Xfinity Series, John Hunter Nemechek, he got the win in one of his part-time starts this year, but it very well could have been his Joe Gibbs teammate, Chandler Smith, getting in victory lane. It seemed like these 2 guys were battling all race long as far as who would get the win. Ultimately, it was John Hunter Nemechek, but Chandler has to be feeling pretty good with where he's at. He has 3 top 5s in 3 races to start the season, and that's a good start. Now for Chandler, it's all about doing what he didn't do last season and keeping this momentum and this speed throughout the rest of the season. But the drivers who came away the biggest winners from this race was Josh Williams and Hailie Deegan. They have had an abysmal start to their season. For Williams, he hadn't even finished in the top 30 in the 2 previous races, and Deegan's best finish was 27th last week at Atlanta. I said last week that they needed to go out to Vegas, complete all the laps, finish the race, and try to come away with a top 15 or top 20 finish. Just something to get the momentum rolling their way, and they went out and did just that. Granted, they did finish a lap down, but they kept it all in one piece, and they didn't crash out of the event. They didn't have any big issues to knock them out of the race. And they both come away with a top 15 finish, with Williams in 14th and Deegan in 15th. Now they can put their attention on Phoenix next weekend, where the goal is now to just do it all over again, come away with a solid finish, and continue to build that. And before we sign off, just a few other finishers in each race that I wanted to highlight. For the Truck Series, you had Grant Enfinger, who is now driving the 9 truck for Cody Warbaugh. He gets his first top 10 of the year after a so-so start to the season. He has led laps in the first 2 races, but he just was not able to get the desired finish he wanted. In the Xfinity Series, you had Ryan Sieg. He started the day in 6th, finished in 7th. He was able to get points in both stages and get a solid top 10 finish, his first one of the season. On the Cup Series side, we talked about Noah Gragson earlier with an impressive run, but how about Ty Gibbs getting his first top 5 of the season? And Gibbs has had a quiet year so far. He was dominant at the Clash before the season began, and he has followed that up with some solid results. He finished 10th at Atlanta last week, 5th yesterday at Las Vegas. And I talked about first-time winners earlier in the show between Hocevar and Corey LaJoie, but I think they're going to have to go through Ty Gibbs with the way he's running as far as who gets their first career win first. And that'll wrap up this week's episode of 3 Wide. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching this from. You can also find me on social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The links to my pages are in the description below. And don't forget to go check out our sponsor, hunttoharvest.com, and pick you up some great hunting apparel. I want to thank everyone for listening along, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And we will see y'all same time next week to go over all the action from Phoenix Raceway.